Welcome to another episode of the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. I'm your brother, old guy from Hip Hop News Uncensored, and sitting across from me is my co-host.
What up, y'all? It's your man Sam Ant from Viral Hip Hop News. You're in the building for a very special edition of the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. We are live in the building on Friday night. We got a special guest in the building back for his second run around with the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. We got the lead attorney. How you doing this afternoon, brother?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me back on. I appreciate it.
Nah, the pleasure's all ours, brother. Like we said, ending our first interview, you're more than welcome on the platform anytime you want. We had some big news coming our way the last couple of days, so what better time to bring you back on and to talk about some Bill Cosby stuff, man. So
yes.
Just give us a basic general overview for the people real quick to kind of get us started. He was released a couple of days ago. The prosecution, well, did you break it down for me?
Absolutely. And again, thank you guys for having me on. And if anybody wants to call in and talk about this case, if anybody has any questions while we're talking, please call in. Also, for you brothers, if I'm speaking too long and you want to just interrupt me, I'm perfect with that. I'm used to it. So don't let me keep going if you want me to stop. All right, I can talk a long time. All right, so you're exactly right. Bill Cosby's conviction was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. We remember that he was convicted in 2018 of sexual assault, sexual battery, and he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years. He had served over 2 of those years, and it looked like he was going to serve a lot more because during the whole trial, after the trial, during his time in prison, he was basically uncooperative in terms of expressing any guilt, expressing any remorse, expressing anything that would intimate or have someone conclude that he was actually guilty. Right. And so he actually said that, listen, I'll do the whole 10 years in here before I admit to anything. So it was looking like he was not going to be released at the 3-year mark. And it needs to really be mentioned that Bill Cosby is an older gentleman. I think he's 83. He's blind or almost blind. He can't see anything. So, and if you see certain pictures of him when he was in prison, he was looking pretty bad. He still looks distinguished when they clean him up and when they present him in court. But in reality, he's not doing so well. So the Supreme Court the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania overturned his conviction. And there were basically 2 points that they were talking about. The first point had to do with allowing witnesses to come into his trial and talk about what he did to them. And this is something that even a lot of attorneys were like, hey, this is a terrible practice. Because what happens is, let's say that you're accused of violating a woman. And so you're on trial with this woman. We'll call her Rebecca. So you're on trial with Rebecca. And you guys are going hot and heavy about whether you did it, whether you didn't do it. And honestly, your life is on the line, right? But then during the trial that you have with Rebecca, Tracy comes in. And Tracy testifies that 20 years ago, you did this to her, you did that to her, you violated her. So now your defense team has to turn its attention to Tracy. And they start going back and forth with Tracy. Well, were you ever arrested? Was there a police report? Were you accused of anything? Were you indicted? Was there a trial? Were you convicted? So then you start getting into all of this detail about what happened to you and Tracy. And look what's happened. Do you see what's happened? Now your trial with Rebecca has turned into a trial between you and Tracy. Mm-hmm. So what you really have is a trial inside of a bigger trial, right? You're on trial for violating Rebecca, but now inside of that, there's this issue of whether you violated Tracy. And the prosecution did this 5 different times. They had Tracy come in and cry in front of the jury, talking about what Bill Cosby supposedly did. And then they had another Sarah come in, and Sarah said he did this and he did that. And then, they had a Jessica come in and you did this and you did that. So what you have was all these individual trials inside of a bigger trial. So that was the first issue. You can imagine how prejudicial that is. Like, you're sitting there trying to convince a jury that you didn't do something against one woman, and then the prosecution brings in all of these other women, stating that you did this against them, and there's no proof of it. It's just their words. That's the whole thing. And it's so prejudicial because if the jury that's sitting there and that, let's say you're getting tried for Rebecca, the jury says, well, there's not a lot of evidence. You and Rebecca kind of he say, she say, I don't know. But then they bring in Tracy, and Tracy starts telling everything that you did. And the jury is like, wow, Tracy was pretty convincing. And then right after Tracy gets up, they sit Sarah down in the witness chair. And now Sarah's talking for hours about what you did, even though there's no proof, no police report, no evidence, no DNA, no violation kit. There's no nothing. But now that Sarah's testified and Tracy's testified, the jury's kind of like, man, maybe you did do something to Rebecca. And then Jessica comes in and Jessica says all of what you did. After 5 times, the jury can be like, well, if he did all of this to 5 different women, then he probably did it to Rebecca, right? And that's why it's so prejudicial. And so that was one of the errors that was brought up in the case, in the appeal that landed in the Supreme Court. The other error, and this is what actually won Bill Cosby his freedom. The error was about this alleged agreement that the prosecution had with Bill Cosby and his attorney. So what are we talking about? Back in the day, in 2004, there was a woman named Constant, and there was an alleged incident that occurred. And it occurred in 2004. Over a year later, in 2005, Constant went to the police and said he did this and he did that and the other. And so the prosecution, the state got involved, the police got involved, and they charged Bill Cosby with the crime. But then when they were actually looking at it, they were like, I don't know if we can win the case, because it was he said, right? Number one. Number two, she had waited, the alleged victim had waited for over a year. So they thought, well, I don't know if she's that credible, because how is the jury going to believe that she actually waited this long? Also, she had given a lot of statements, and some of the statements were not that consistent. She had made some inconsistencies in all of her statements. And again, with there being no other evidence, there wasn't any DNA or anything like that. The prosecution did not think they could win a case. But and also, of course, there were all these other women, but they didn't think that they could get the testimony from the other women into his trial. And so the prosecution said, listen, we can't get Bill Cosby unless he testifies, unless he confesses. And it does not look like he's going to confess. So we have this alleged victim, this Constant. How can she get justice if we don't think we can win a case? And again, they were not going to try the case if they didn't think they could win, because prosecutors are all about their conviction rates. They're about these numbers. They want their conviction rate to be high. So this is what they said. They said, listen, if we can't get her justice on the criminal side, at least we can get her some money. We can help her in her civil suit. She had filed a civil claim, and she was asking for millions of dollars. So this is what they did, and this is important. They issued a press release stating that they would not go after, they would not charge Bill Cosby for anything related to that incident. Why did they do that? Because if they did that, then Bill Cosby would have to testify in the civil case. Because again, the whole goal had shifted from getting Bill Cosby into prison to making Bill Cosby give up the bag, right? And it worked in a sense that he had to testify in that civil case. If the prosecution had not made that press release, if they had not agreed to basically grant him a type of immunity, then Bill Cosby in that deposition could have said, I'm not going to testify. I have my Fifth Amendment rights, and I'm going to invoke that. And if he didn't testify in that civil case, it would have hurt that case, and she wouldn't have been able to get any money. The prospects would have been lower. So by the state agreeing not to charge him, that made it so that Constant could get some money from him. And it worked. He had to testify. He gave 4 different depositions, and she ended up settling for $3.38 million, right? So she got a lot of money out of this, more than anybody else had received. Well, what happened? What happened? The DA who made that agreement and got that woman that money moved on. And so 10 years later, there was a new prosecutor in town. And the new prosecutor found out about this. And, you know, prosecutors are just like us. They got mortgages and things like that. They think about their career. And the prosecutor was like, hey, if I can get a conviction of Bill Cosby, think what that will do for my, you know, my career. I can make a name for myself. You know, a lot of these prosecutors, they don't get really too hyped up over convicting you over jaywalking or convicting you over your little nickel and dime bags. But if they can get a Pablo, right, that's a huge notch on their belt. And they can say, you know, when they run for re-election, they can say, I can do this and I can do that. And so this prosecutor wanted to get Bill Cosby. And what they did was they went and reopened, because what had happened was when Bill Cosby reached that agreement and paid that money, paid the $3.38 million, they sealed the deposition so that no one could get access to it. But what happened was the prosecutor went and had the deposition unsealed. Had the deposition unsealed and pulled it out and then used the deposition against him. And there were some things in that deposition that did not favor Bill Cosby. There were some incriminating statements. So the question was, can the prosecutors agree to make a deal, or can they announce that they're going to make a deal? Can they announce that they're not going to prosecute you? And then you rely on that announcement and then you testify against your interest. And then they come back later and say, no, there's no deal. And then they use your testimony against you. So those were the two issues that were on the table in this case. And the Supreme Court, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, decided the case basically on that issue, on whether or not the state could make an agreement, get you to talk, get you to open your mouth, get you to tell on yourself. And then once they have the evidence that you told on yourself, can they take that agreement back and try to prosecute you and then use your own words that you said when you testified against you in that trial? So that was the kind of the layout of the case. And this is very interesting because, you know, there are a lot of facets to this. This is complicated. You have a lot of people. Let's talk about the Black community for a second. You have a lot of people in the Black community that are ecstatic about this. They are super happy about this verdict. They are happy that Bill Cosby is coming home. Bill Cosby has done a lot of good in our community. There are also people, really people like me, who are happy about the decision, the legal decision, because a lot of times in our community, our people do not get justice. Excuse me. And you saw in this case, Bill Cosby had his trial and he won it. Well, it was a hung jury, right? So they tried him again and he lost. So what did he do? He had to appeal. He appealed again to the Superior Court. And guess what? He lost there. And so he appealed again to the Supreme Court, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and he won, right? So that shows you that there were errors committed, but he was actually able to get those errors corrected. And a lot of times for people in our community, there are errors and they cannot get those errors corrected. So I'm ecstatic about the fact that you can say, in a sense, that the legal system worked. He got a raw deal at the trial. When he appealed, that appeal was erroneously denied, but there was another step in the quality control process, and it caught the errors and fixed it. And for someone in our community to have all those errors and then to have the legal court, the legal system fix those errors, it's a win for us. It's a win for us. So there are people who love Bill Cosby, and so they're happy that he's out. There are people who, like me, really value the legal system, and you know there were some errors in it, but at the end of the day it worked. And then even for the people who believe that he did these terrible things, they can take a silver lining out of this, to the extent that the court never said that he didn't commit anything. The court never said that he never molested this person or that he never violated this other person. The court didn't even look at those facts. So it's difficult. No one can really say, hey, the court looked at all the facts and said that I didn't do anything with any of these women. That's not what the court decision was about. So it's not like a court said he didn't violate this person or the other person. So that's a silver lining that they can take if they really believe that he did something. So, you know, there's a little bit for everybody in this case. It's pretty complex.
Right. So let's talk about, you know, the lawsuit. Matter of fact, let's go back. Let's talk about did you actually read like exactly, you know, did you read the whole deposition and everything about the Benadryl? 'Cause we had an attorney from Indiana the other day, Mr. B.D. Williams, and he broke it down that it was actually Benadryl that was given to these ladies. Did you get that far into reading that?
Yes, and I also read the 79-page deposition, the 79-page court order from the Supreme Court, and that's mainly what I focused on. And that talked about the Benadryl versus Quaalude distinction there, right? Because there were portions in the depositions where he said, "I gave Benadryl, you know, just 3/2 of a Benadryl to the Constant," and so that's what Constant had. But the Supreme Court also noted that in other parts of the deposition, because he gave 4 depositions, and there were times when he didn't want to answer any questions. And when he didn't want to answer questions, the Condon's attorneys, they ran to the court and they made him answer. And what the Supreme Court said was that in some parts of those depositions, he did admit to giving Quaaludes or using Quaaludes with other women, not with Constant, but with other women. And so that was kind of the distinction there. But yes, there were Quaaludes involved. He admitted to using Quaaludes with women, but not with Constant. And Constant was the alleged victim in the trial that's been going on since 2018.
So we got the court of law, and then we got in 2021, especially the court of public opinion. And whether he's guilty or not, at this point, I guess is beside the point, because you have a lot of people leaning on the side of him being innocent, a lot of people leaning on the side of him being 100% guilty. And I don't know what the percentages are, but I'm sure a lot of women in either community, because you see people within Hollywood and within entertainment, black and white, in particular, just females, upset about this verdict and saying that he's a monster and this, that, or the third. So when we talk about the court of public opinion, has his image, in your opinion, been destroyed regardless of the good news of him being released from prison?
Yeah, that's it's such a tough question, because let me tell you what I personally believe. But before I tell you what I personally believe, let me tell you that personal opinions don't matter at all. Right. I got a personal opinion and it doesn't matter at all. This is just an opinion that stays in my head. Right. And it carries no weight, right? So there's no asterisk or anything besides Bill Cosby. I don't think there should be, based on my opinion. It's not like my opinion's so important. I think that something went on with some of these women. I just, generally speaking, I don't know what went on because I wasn't there. I don't know exactly who. I don't know. But I think that something happened. Right? Not necessarily with all of them. And some of them could have been lying. But if you tell me that there's 60 women, it's hard for me to believe that nothing ever went on with any of them. Having said that, that's just my personal opinion and it doesn't matter. All right. In terms of the court, in terms of the public opinion, it's interesting because let me take a step back for a second and talk about the justice system and our people. It used to be back in the 30s and the 40s that, you know, our father was lynched, or, you know, our uncle didn't come home. And, you know, maybe there was a facade of a trial, right? So our uncle doesn't come home, and 3 weeks later, there's a trial of 2 men down in South Alabama. And in South Alabama in the 40s, what does the all-white jury say? The all-white jury says, hey, he's not guilty, right? Now, you know, and I know, and everybody in our neighborhood knows what happened to our uncle. But the jury said he was not guilty. So are these 2 men innocent, right? Even if we have proof, even though there were witnesses, but it's an all-white jury in South Alabama in the 40s. But we're supposed to respect the law and say, listen, we all know what happened, but these two men are innocent, and let's go about our day. Because that's kind of how we have to live in society. We have to respect the rule of law. Well, 2021, you've got an incident with a man, and maybe some people think something happened, but the court says no. Now the shoe's kind of on the other foot, right? The shoe's on the other foot. And women who are against this, women have to, not necessarily women, because there are men who are upset about this too. And
Right.
even I think something must have had to gone on with at least one of these women. So even I think something went. But now that I'm an adult, I'm an attorney, I see the value of the legal system. I have to say, hey, I'm not going to put any asterisk by this man's name. When I talk about Bill Cosby, I have done videos about Bill Cosby in the past, and I've been critical about him. Why? Because the legal system said he was guilty. To me, if the legal system says you're guilty, that's kind of what we got to go on, even if we suspect something's different. Now the legal system has said not only is he not guilty, but that he got an unfair trial. And so I'm extremely happy that he's released to the extent that he got that unfair trial, even though I think something might have happened. So it's kind of hard to balance these two ideas. So in the court of public opinion, you say, is his reputation damaged? Is it beyond repair? I don't know. People who love Cosby are going to love him regardless.
Yeah.
It's like R. Kelly. I don't want to conflate the two. Listen, you put on an R. Kelly song, there's a lot of people in our community that are going to rock out to it.
Yeah.
Even though they knew what happened in that home down here in Atlanta. They suspect they know what happened. And there were some things that weren't kosher going down in that home.
Mm.
But, is his reputation tarnished? Or even with Michael Jackson. Right. Michael Jackson did a lot of good for our community, certainly entertained us, world-class elite entertainer. But there were these allegations swirling. So I think Bill Cosby falls in that same category where people who love him are going to love him regardless. There are people like me who think something happened, but we're not going to hold it against him because the legal system said that nothing happened. And if the legal system said that nothing happened, we're going to go with that. And then there are other people who are like, we don't care what the legal system said. Mm-hmm. We think we know what happened. And to not to give support to these people because I don't agree with them, but I will say this, in the 1940s in South Alabama, they had a point. They had a point when all these all-white juries were letting off white men who had done things to our brothers and sisters. They had a point back then. So does the fact that they have a point back then, how does that relate to what's going on now? So to me, it's just like, listen, I'm just going to go with legalities. For example, there was news today that came out that Sha'Carri, the 100-meter finalist, our 21-year-old strong sister, right? Yeah. She was going to the Olympics, and everybody knows she was going to win that gold medal. Yeah. The question was she going to break FloJo's record? Yeah. And it's interesting because FloJo was bad. In my heart, I believe FloJo was on PEDs. And I see her race. Me too. I see that woman run. Yeah. I absolutely think she was on PEDs, but she was never tested. Well, she never failed a drug test for PEDs. I'm not even sure if they were testing her, but let's just say that she never failed a drug test for PEDs. So even though I believe she was on PEDs, I would never put an asterisk by her records, right? Yep. If she won it and she wasn't tested or none of her tests came back dirty, then you won it. And so that's kind of how I view this situation with Bill Cosby. Some people are happy that he's out because of who he is. Some people are mad that he's out because of what they think he did. And then there are people in the middle like me who are like, man, the justice system worked for a black person. Now, there are people who feel that way like I do, but they're also upset that to get the justice system to work, you have to be a Bill Cosby. You have to be able to afford to lose at the trial court. Then you have to be able to afford to pay for the appeal and lose the appeal. Then you have to be able to afford to pay for the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court case. We all know this man spent multiple millions of dollars to get the errors in his trial corrected. But we all know Pookies and Ray Rays, sometimes they can't even afford their own attorneys. They're in there with the public defender, right? And if the judge makes a mistake, like the judge made a mistake in Bill Cosby's case, there's no one to pay for the correction. There's no one to pay to get this thing corrected. And so a lot of people say that even though he got justice, look at what you had to be as a black man to get justice in this country, right? So it's super interesting. There's a lot of facets to this case, but I am happy that it seems like the justice system caught errors. You know, some of your viewers might not know who I am, but I have been practicing in Atlanta for 20 years and in and out of courtrooms since day one. And I have seen so many errors, and I have looked at people who cannot afford to get those errors fixed, and they have to live with those errors. Getting errors corrected is extremely expensive. It could cost you $100,000 easy. And most of our community, what do they say? There's a study saying that 60% of Americans can't come up with $400 cash. Right? How is it that there's something along those lines, like 60% of Americans cannot come up with $400 cash, but to get the errors corrected in your criminal case, it's going to cost you $100,000. It's going to cost you $75,000. You can't come up with $400. Where the hell are you going to get $75,000? Right? So there are a lot of our brothers and sisters, predominantly brothers, but certainly sisters too, in jail, in prison, on parole, on probation, for things that they should not be in the system for, right? So, you know, there's a lot of ways to consider that case, to consider this, but at the end of the day, at least for Bill Cosby, the system worked. Now, a lot of people have conflict because they say, well, how is it, lead attorney, that you're saying that the system worked when you think, or when we all think, or when some of us think that he's absolutely guilty of all 60? Some people think he's guilty of some women think all women, some people believe that all women should be believed. And if 60 women come forward, then 60 women should be believed. And if 60 women should be believed, then Bill Cosby violated 60 women. So they're asking themselves, how can this attorney say that the system worked when this man violated 60 women? And what they need to understand is, you know, my view is a little biased in the sense because I'm an attorney. You know, there was this guy in England in the 1700s. His name was William Blackstone. And he was, you know, one of the forefathers of the law in England that was transported here to the United States. And his name was Blackstone, and there's a Blackstone ratio. And the Blackstone ratio says that it's better for 10 guilty men to escape than for one innocent man to suffer. You know, and Benjamin Franklin got a hold of that, and he increased it from 10 to 100. So Benjamin Franklin's like, it's better for 100 guilty men to go free than it is for one innocent man to suffer unjustly, right? And so this is a foundation, a fundamental principle of our entire system. And so you say, hey, Bill Cosby, if you believe that he violated 60 women, fine, but he escaped. And that is ingrained, that fundamental portion is ingrained in that fundamental precept, or that fundamental principle is ingrained in our system, that you will have people who are guilty in a reality sense, but they will be free, they will escape because they are not guilty in a legal sense. So it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yes, sir. I want to travel down this lane with you and go and talk about the possible lawsuit that can come out of this. Now, I think yesterday, I think it was TMZ reported that Bill Cosby would be pursuing a lawsuit against the prosecution in the state. Talk about that aspect of the case and how likely is it that he wins that lawsuit?
Yeah, I heard that. I heard TMZ said that it was a possibility, but okay. I don't know if he's actually going to do it. And, you know, anytime when a police officer violates your rights or a prosecutor violates your right, or any other government actor, you have the opportunity to file a case against them. Now, generally, these cases are very hard to win. They're extremely hard, but Bill Cosby has the money to go ahead and do that. I will say though, because someone asked me if Bill Cosby would file a slander suit or defamation. And, with him not cooperating during the whole trial, with him not cooperating even with the parole board, considering his age, considering the fact that he's a little feeble, considering the fact that he's blind, I'm not sure if he wants to spend the rest of his years locked in litigation. No matter if he wins, if he decides to file like a prosecutorial misconduct claim or any other type of claim, that claim could easily take years to prosecute. In fact, he might not live to see the result. And if he doesn't live to see the result, then they're going to dismiss the case as moot anyway. And so you figure, his health, you figure his age. I'm not sure he's going to file that. If it were me, Bill Cosby right now is surrounded by people that love him, surrounded by people that believe in him. Even if he wins that case, he's not going to get the years back. What he could win, maybe is more money. But at this point, 83 and blind, does he need more money? Right? I'm not sure what the cost benefit analysis would be if he decided to pursue that claim. I myself wouldn't pursue it. And actually, even though TMZ says that he could pursue it, I would be surprised if he did.
You said something in your previous statement. You said that you were biased because you were a lawyer and you understood like the parameters of what was going on as far as justice and the legal system and things like that. And that made me kind of go to reflect on a broader level. And that's just our people and how we're moved by emotion. We're very emotional people. And when you look at the ultimate chess game, emotion is the ultimate pawn in that chess game because we run on emotion, but facts and how they play the game really doesn't apply to when it comes to emotion. So how, in your opinion, or to the best of your knowledge, how can you explain to the people, how can we better suit ourselves to understand the game, even when it comes to racial and social justice issues that we deal with, to better suit ourselves, to not get so emotional in situations, but to be able to handle them directly and better ourselves as a people?
Yeah, I mean, you're really bringing up a great point, and it's so hard, especially for us, because again, you don't even have to go back to the 1940s in Alabama. You can go back to the 60s and the 70s and the dogs and the water hoses. Shoot, you can go back to the 90s and the 2000s. To be honest, some of our uncles are in prison, some of our brothers are in prison. They shouldn't be there, right? Yeah. And so we have been violated so much by the legal system. And so I think it's natural for our community to be distrustful. It's natural for our community to be emotional. You'll hear a guy try to insult another guy and say, oh, well, you're just in your feelings or you're just being emotional. Yeah. Sometimes you should be in your feelings without being falsely prosecuted, falsely arrested, abused in prison. You should, if you're not going to be emotional about that, what the hell? Why are you even on the planet? Why are you even living? Right? Well, what are you going to be emotional about? What matters if your freedom is not going to matter to you? If the freedom that your community has isn't going to matter. So I think it is absolutely natural and understandable that we are emotional about this process. I think men, sometimes we really do ourselves a disservice by trying to play down emotion. And the instant anybody gets upset, oh, you're in your feelings. The instant anybody gets upset, oh, you're emotional, you're acting like a woman, right? When really, sometimes it's emotion that really gets us to act. Sometimes we can use emotion to get us where we need to be. So I definitely agree that there should be some emotion in this. And I understand why it's so hard to accept the outcome if you believe that Bill Cosby did these things with these women. I'll tell you this though, and this is really where I'm coming from. This is why I would subjugate our emotions to the legal system. I would say the legal system should be supporting our emotions. It shouldn't be the other way around. Right. I lived in Mexico for a number of years. And their legal system is shitty. It is horrific. You can pay off police officers. Early in my career, I represented this gentleman, and he paid me a retainer to start his case. He paid me $5,000. And I started up his case, and the case was going to take a long time. It was going to take months. The justice system is slow. And I called him into my office 3 weeks later to give him an update on the case. And he came in and he was like, well, where's the final order to the case? And I said, the final order? What do you mean? He's like, the case is ended, right? I was like, no, the case hasn't. We're just getting started. It's going to take months. And he said, well, I gave you $5,000. And I said, yeah, you did give me $5,000. And he looked at me and he said, well, you didn't give those $5,000 to the judge?
Oh, shit.
Oh, wow.
Right? He was from Mexico. He didn't understand our system, right, where you just can't pay $5,000 and 3 weeks later your case goes away. I lived there, and there are things in Mexican law that would amaze you. One of these things, for example, is that here in the United States, you are innocent until proven guilty, which is why Bill Cosby today stands as an innocent man, because he has not been proven guilty in any court of law. In Mexico, it's the opposite. In Mexico, you are guilty until you are proven innocent. So when you are arrested and in jail, you have to prove your innocence. And I cannot tell you how hard that is. Well, I give you a statistic that'll show you how hard it is. The statistic that'll show you how hard it is that if you are arrested, there's like a 97, 98% conviction rate.
Whoa.
What does that mean? It means it is exceedingly difficult. Once you are arrested, it is exceedingly difficult for you to prove that you are innocent because you're in jail. You guys, a trial in Mexico, for example, and I know we're talking about Mexican law, but you need something to compare our system to. Yeah. So many people are complaining about our system, but they haven't thought of any other system. So many people will say, oh, well, in Switzerland, it's so much better, even though Switzerland is the size of Las Vegas, right? It's the size of Nevada. You can't compare Switzerland's justice system to ours. The United States is a big country. And so, for example, in Mexico, you go to trial, it's closed, it's sealed. No one can go in and watch your trial. No one knows what's happened. Wow. There's no jury. I think now they're starting to implement juries, but back in the day when I was there in the 2000s, there was no jury. It was just the judge, one person controlling the whole outcome. Here, if you're arrested for selling dope, at least you can have 12 people kind of decide and discuss whether you're right or not. In Mexico, there's just the judge. If the judge is having a bad day, those are your 30 years right there. Then on top of that, you have to prove that you are innocent. Now, let's say you testify and you say that you're innocent. You know what the state does, what the prosecutor does? They have a file this thick of just paperwork. And you say, well, I'm innocent because of this. I was here and I've got this alibi and I couldn't have done it. And you know what they say? They say, well, the file says that you're guilty. And the judge says, oh, well, the prosecutor said that the file said, the paperwork says you're guilty. So because the paperwork says you're guilty, I'm going to find you guilty. That was your trial. And now you're in prison for 5 years. Mexico, guys, it's not like the Congo over there in Africa. Mexico is next door. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not like it's some faraway neverland place. We're not talking about Tanzania. We're not talking about China. We're talking about our next door neighbor has this is in their constitution. Right? It could be so easy for us to have a jacked up system where we have to prove our innocence. So, you hear a lot of things. You hear the phrase first world problems, right? And, if something goes wrong, but, it's, the cable's out, but you're super mad because, the World Series is on and you had money riding on the game, but you can't watch it because your cable's out, right? That's a first world problem. A lot of times in the United States, we have, relatively speaking, first world problems when it comes to our justice system. And there's very little that I can say that will allow you to really understand it unless you live in a country like that, unless you get pulled over by the cops and the cops are like, listen, I can give you a $300 ticket, but I'm about to go to lunch, and I think the lunch is going to cost $40.
Wow.
And then you reach into your wallet and you pull out $40. And it could very well be that the cop was going to lunch anyway and needed $40. So you were not even violating the law. He just pulled you over to get his lunch money. That doesn't happen in the United States. Here you get pulled over because you're black, right? but at least it's not for the cops' lunch money. Right. And so this is your question was, how do you let people know when they have these emotional feelings? How do you let them know that the legal system really is something to be valued? And I would just say that the best way is to get outside our legal system and start looking at other people's legal systems, other countries' legal systems. Because once you look at other people's legal systems, you shut up. For example, let's say that I was playing basketball and I got a broken ankle, and it's broken pretty bad. And I'm pissed off about it because, I got to go to work the next day. I'm not going to be able to go to the gym. I'm not going to be able to run. I'm not going to be able to play basketball. And let's be honest, I'm bitching about it. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe it. I can't play this and that. But then I go to a veterans hospital. And I see men there with no leg. You go to a veterans hospital, you're going to see a lot of BS.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of things. Well, guess what? Now about my ankle, I've shut up. I don't talk about my broken ankle anymore. Before I went to the veterans hospital, I had a lot to say about my broken ankle. Now that I'm in here with all these veterans in their rehab, you don't hear me say a word. So a lot of times for us to understand the importance of our legal systems with its flaws, Lord knows our legal system has flaws. Mm-hmm. It would be helpful if we could go to other places and see that, if you have a child, of course, this is one of the main reasons why you want your child to travel. I'm sure there's a lot of black kids in New York that, they haven't gone outside of their neighborhoods and they're 14 years old. Right. But, if you have a child, you really want to try to put them on a plane, send them down here to Atlanta, right? Send them to California, send them to Las Vegas, and they're looking around, looking at all the casinos. Their minds open up, right? Send them to Europe. And then when they come back to New York, when they come back to New Jersey, they're like, oh, this ain't the whole thing, right? A lot of times, because most people are not attorneys, they don't get that experience to travel and look at other nations' laws. So they're thinking this is the whole thing. And they're seeing all of the errors. And they're like, how can this be? How can we have this system with all these errors? And it does have so many errors, but they haven't traveled, right? Or if they do travel, they're trying to compare the United States to Finland or to Sweden, which is the size of like Rhode Island or something. It's probably bigger, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Trying to compare, a huge country to basically a state. So that's what I would say about that. There's really nothing that I can just like there's nothing that you can tell a child that really will tell them. There's nothing that you can tell a child that will substitute for travel. If you have a child that, a 14-year-old that's never been on an airplane, there's nothing you can tell them about France. There's nothing you can tell them about Tanzania. There's nothing you could tell them about Johannesburg without them actually really going there. You showing them pictures on your iPhone is not going to cut it.
Right.
And so I guess what I could tell the people is that if you really knew how jacked up some of the constitutions are in other countries, you might have a little less to say about ours. You would still acknowledge, hey, my ankle hurts. I've got a broken ankle and it hurts. You would still acknowledge that. But some of your complaints about your ankle would be diminished when you are in a hospital with recovering veterans of war. I guess that's what I would say to that.
Definitely powerful. You're tuning to the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast on the Friday night. Everybody listen, go ahead and smash that like button and make sure you share the video. We got the lead attorney in the building today. Make sure you guys go check his YouTube channel out at the lead attorney right now. We'll leave the link in the description box. Everybody's going to watch this later. I want to ask you about the conspiracy. I seen my man Doug putting in the chat. He talked about that some of the women were caught up in lies. Is there any chance that a portion of these women, lied, to try to kind of gain some type of fame and notoriety and money? And do you think there was a conspiracy against Bill Cosby? Everybody talked about him trying to buy NBC at one point. Could you talk about that lane for our audience?
Absolutely. Even the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said, hey, we see some inconsistencies in what Constant was saying. They didn't call them lies, but they call them inconsistencies, right? They also noted that, right before or right around the time when Constant was thinking about filing the police report, she got on the phone with some civil lawsuit attorneys, right? She was trying to see about getting the bag even before pursuing the criminal action. And so you're like, it's getting squirrely. And then on top of that, it ended up where she did get $3.38 million. Now she had to pay that back. She had to pay it back because she violated that agreement. But she came up. There are a lot of women. There's so many women and men who are violated, and they don't get a dime. They don't get one dime. At least she got $3.8 million, but then, justice or karma, who knows? She had to give it all up. But there's absolutely money involved. And to be honest, let's be honest too, on Cosby's side, when the heat started kicking up, Constant got her mother on the phone with Bill Cosby. It was a three-way. And the mother was like, hey man, my daughter's saying some stuff. What's going on? And Bill's like, no. Bill said, we never had sex. I've never touched your daughter. We never had non-consensual sex. We never had consensual sex. Me and your daughter never did anything. Now it turns out that was a lie, because in the deposition testimony, he testified to having consensual sex 3 times with Constant, 3 times. But he told the mom, no, we never had sex, anything. And then after that conversation, what did he do? He got his attorney to call Constant. And what did the attorney say? The attorney said, hey, Ms. Constant, guess what? Bill Cosby has authorized me to set up a trust for you for your education, to fund your entire education. So just give me your name and your address, and we can process these funds right now. So if you are a man of means, there's absolutely going to be money involved, and could it be sketchy? Absolutely. I compare this. I don't compare is the wrong word. All right. But you can kind of correlate this to our brother Deshaun Watson down there in Texas. Mm-hmm. Deshaun Watson, he was all good and signed that $180 million contract. But things started getting a little squirrely. And he's like, you know what? I don't want to play here anymore. Bam. Right when he said he didn't want to play, what happened? All of these women start coming out of the woodwork saying that he violated them, right? First, there were 3 women that came out. Then they were 6. Then they were 16. Then they were 20. Then by that Friday, they were 24. The numbers kept growing, saying that he had done all this stuff like a year prior. And it's like, well, how is it that when he was playing, when he wanted to play for Texas, there was nothing? Everybody was great. Now that he says he doesn't want to play, all of these women start coming out of the woodwork. But again, right? So people who talk about there is a conspiracy, you see where they're coming from. Especially because one of the women that Deshaun Watson slept with, some little 23-year-old goofy knucklehead, slept with her, and then she turned around and basically sent him a text saying, hey, if you don't send me 30 grand on the Cash App, I'm telling everybody it was a violation.
Wow. That easy.
The goofy girl sent it in a text. Said, run me my 30 grand, said ship it. And then, it's like, so is money involved? Absolutely. Can conspiracies be involved? Absolutely. Condon got her $3.38 million. Deshaun Watson's trying to get hit up for $30,000 here, which lets you know that the girl is goofy as hell, because this man signed a $200 million contract and she's asking for peanuts. That's how you know 24-year-olds ain't got no sense. They think $30,000 is worth something. And when you grown, you know $30,000 ain't gonna get you nowhere. Right? And you're certainly not going to do that via text. So your point is well taken. Like you were saying, he's trying to buy this thing with NBC. A lot of people didn't like it because of his skin color. You know, if he was white and had a different last name, you know, no one would have had a problem with it. But because he's black and didn't have a certain sounding name, now people have a problem with it. And now all of these allegations start coming forth. So, you know, I try not to place too much credibility or too much credence into conspiracy theories, but I absolutely want to acknowledge when there's some evidence of it, when things look shaky and things look sketchy. With that, and of course with the money as well. The fact that Constant she had the police on one phone, and then she had her civil lawyers on the other. Right? Can we get them arrested? How much money can I get? Are you going to arrest them on Tuesday? When can we file that civil case? Right? So it looks sketchy when you have money and people start coming after it, because you don't know whether they're coming after you for the justice or whether they're coming after you for the money. Really, it's like being in a relationship. You know, if you're a man and you're making $300,000 and then you start dating and you bring her home and she looks around at your home and all the square footage, now she really likes you. Why? Is it because of who you are, or is it because of your 6-bedroom house?
Yeah.
You know, see, you can tell the fact that I say 6-bedroom house. I'm down here in Atlanta, right? 600, you know, a 6-bedroom house where you guys live, Jesus, right?
A couple million is John.
That's exactly right. 300,000 ain't gonna get you that. Yeah. That's why all you guys come down here to Atlanta. We got more people from the north in Atlanta than real Atlanta.
We come soon.
I have a couple brothers out there in a couple years too.
Yeah. Really?
let me.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Now, so there was a lot of great conversation going on as you were speaking about the justice system in America as opposed to the justice system in other countries. I've seen a lot of people giving some great dialect. So I want to play devil's advocate real quick, because to the people that would say, okay, that's easily said. Yes, we have 11 jurors. Yes, there's due process, quote unquote. Yes, we are innocent, quote unquote, until proven guilty. Is that just a mask for the land of the free, home of the brave rhetoric? While we know a lot of black males and a lot of black females, in particular black males, are being used in these legalized prisons for legalized slavery for pennies on a dollar. So there's obviously a slick game in play as well. What do you say to that?
I say it's true. That's why it's so tough to play devil's advocate, because the devil is telling the truth. You know, what did they do? You know, 3 years ago, they arrested that damn judge. I think it was here in Georgia. He was selling black kids. A judge was selling black kids. He sold like over 1,000. You say, well, who did he sell them to? He sold them to the damn jail. Every head that he sent to that jail, he got a kickback. And he was sending black heads. You know, and even the lawyers because if you're a lawyer in a county, after a while, you start to notice what judges are doing, right? Because you're bringing your clients through. And even the judges were knowing, hey, if you're white as a kid, juvenile court, you're going to get probation. If you're white as a kid in juvenile court here, you're going to get a fine. If you're black, you're going to jail. And he was sending all of these black kids to jail so that he could get all of these kickbacks. And it's so hard to find because, you know, let's say your son steals a car. And then the judge puts him in jail. He's 15 and he takes a joyride, and the judge puts him in jail. Yeah. You, as a parent, you're only in that court one time. So you're like, well, I guess this is justice. What you didn't see, though, were that the other 10 kids who did the same thing your kid did were white, and they all got probation and a fine. So it really took the attorneys to really see the pattern. So many of these things are so hard to spot. And so if you can get away with selling black kids to jail for a kickback, you are not going to get me up here talking about the American justice system is perfect.
Right.
And really, there are very few people in the chat who have seen, hey, listen, I'm in court every day, right? No one can tell me, and I've been doing this for 20 years. No one can tell me about the horrors that occur.
Yeah.
At the same time, Guys, if you keep up with the legals, there's a prison in Venezuela where there are no guards, basically. It's just, this huge prison. And the inmates run the prison. And the inmates have knives. The inmates have guns. The inmates have dope. They have their own money. They have cell phones. And this is a hardcore prison. And I saw a report on it to where there was a 17-year-old. He had been arrested and put in the prison while he awaited trial. He had been there 3 years and his trial date was still not set. All right. And he had stolen something. And they all wearing street clothes and this and that. There are no uniforms. There's nothing. And the higher ups enforce their own law. And so he had stolen something, and the punishment was to take a gunshot in each hand. And so they had recently shot him through that, and he showed the fucking bullet wounds. And do you know what he said? He was happy. He was like, look, it missed the bones. Right? No bones. Like, I'm good. Like, he was so happy about that. This is in Venezuela. Our justice system could be so bad. You guys do not realize how bad it could be.
Yeah.
You do not know how bad it could be. Have we always been terrorized by the justice system? Yes. Yeah. What do you want me to tell you? It's true, but god damn. There are just so many travesties around the world. So, I respect anybody that plays the devil's advocate, but this is a hard devil's advocate to play because the devil's right.
Yeah.
Our system is jacked up. And it happens big, it happens small. Listen, a few years ago, I got pulled over for a ticket, a speeding ticket, and I checked online, and it was $300. I was like, oh. But I tried to pay it online and I couldn't. I had to show up to court. Fine. So I show up to court, and it's in one of these counties. It's a small municipality outside of Atlanta. And I was speeding. The cop got me. The cop was fine. It was my fault. I was speeding. And I show up, and when I show up, it's night court, right? So night court is in this small little building. I mean, it's really like a one-room building, almost like you can envision like a big trailer. And it had people coming out. There was the courtroom was so packed. There were people coming out. So I ducked in, and I see it stank in there. Everybody in there was hot. Everybody had just come from work. You saw people in uniforms, saw people with Taco Bell shirts on, poor people, right? Humble people. So I walk in there. I couldn't even fit in there. I poke my head in, and I try to get a hold of the prosecutor. Prosecutor comes out. He says, hey, what do you want to do? I said, well, I guess I want to pay it, but I didn't let me pay it online. So, okay, you got to speak to the judge. And I said, well, listen, I can't even fit in here. Come get me when it's my turn. And he says, fine. I knew the prosecutor. So he comes out and gets me, and he says, you're up. And I go in there, I'm having to squeeze through everybody, and it stinks in there, and it's hot. And I'm seeing just, humble people in there. And I go in there, and I get up in front of the judge. Turns out the judge is an attorney, and we've had cases before. Whoa. In these municipal courts, the judges they're just part-time judges. They're real attorneys, but they're part-time judges. And I'm feeling bad in there because I'm seeing my ticket $300, and I'm like, man, these poor people, you guys are making a killing in here. There's so many people in here. You're trying to buy a new court building. Yeah. Wow. And so I go in there, and the judge is like, lead attorney, it's great to see. I was like, oh, judge, I didn't know you were a judge. It's like, yeah, I'm doing this part-time. I was like, yeah, that's good. And he says, okay, well, have a good day. Mm-hmm. And I said, what? He's like, yeah, your case is dismissed. Have a good day. And I was like, thank you. Here's the thing. Out of all of those poor people, if you really want to take justice, not only was I guilty, but out of all those poor people, the person who least deserved mercy in there, who could really afford the $300 was me. Right?
All right.
But I get to go scot-free, and then the next person who's working at the damn chicken plant, or, a part-time manager at KFC making $17 an hour, that person has to pay the $300. That is a form of corruption. Well, I don't even know, because it's like, listen, I actually had to show up to court. The cop that gave me the ticket, he was in his right. He pulled me over and he gave me the ticket. But guess what? It could have been that the person who he pulled over right before me had blonde hair, had blue eyes, had a nice top. And guess what she got? She got a warning, right? She didn't even have to show up to court. So you got the white woman who doesn't have to show up to court. You got the black attorney who skips out on the ticket. And then you got the poor Taco Bell worker who has to pay $300 and doesn't know where the hell she's going to get it from. This is all within our legal system. What's right? What's wrong? Who knows? Right? Why didn't I get the warning? I would have liked to have gotten a warning and not had to show up in that hot ass court.
Right.
Or, but I'm thankful that, not that I need the ratchet $300, but I'll take it if you give it to me. Right.
Definitely.
But then there were other people who honestly really could not afford it. Other people who would have had to reach into their child support money to get that $300. They're the ones who have to sit there in the heat and then pay that. Right. So our justice system is all over the place. But, at least, in our prisons, everybody's not walking around with guns and machetes.
Yeah.
Definitely, man. But yeah, we got the lead attorney here on the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast tonight. Sam, man, I don't know if you got anything else on your side of the table. You're good over there. Next time, I guess we hit the hour mark, so we'll do we'll hit the calls next time. We'll bring you back in next time. That's all right with you.
Sounds perfect.
The roll here. Apologize for that. But yeah, Melrose Honey says thank you for the transparency. So like I said to everybody out there, make sure you follow the lead attorney and go ahead and drop your social media handles for everybody too as well, please.
Yes, I need to get on that. I'm such a simple guy. I just got YouTube, guys. So just go to the lead attorney on YouTube. Please subscribe to my channel. And again, I just want to thank you, brothers, for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
Nah, anytime, brother. Lead attorney on the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. You can find his YouTube platform. I believe the link is currently in the description box or in the live chat, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody dropped that once again for the brother. Go check him out. Great content. Definitely appreciate your support. Like we said last time, you're more than welcome on anytime. We appreciate the perspective. We appreciate the dialogue, man. Salute.
Thank you so much. Salute to you guys.
Thank you.
All right, everybody have a good night, man. Special shout out to my man Doug. American Negro in here, old school. Everybody's been rocking out with the platform. We definitely appreciate you guys. And we're probably going to make this a regular thing, man. Try to come back every Friday if we can, about 6 p.m. So get ready, man. It's your brother Sam Ant, Viral Hip Hop News, on your brother Guy Hip Hop News, Uncensored together. Be the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. Over and out. Peace.
Peace.